Hello everyone. So, just want to make a quick video. This video is actually on the Holocaust and how people are just completely blinded by, in my opinion, oral tradition or oral anecdotal evidence to basically believe something that literally is based on more than 90% eyewitness testimonies. And I find it funny that Dr. Robert Price sits there and belittles Christians because we believe in oral tradition that was passed down, and we believe that the Gospels are actually a historical account. And he criticizes us because of that, because we use hearsay evidence to basically construct a historical reconstruction of an event or of something that happened in the past. But yet, when he refers to his story here, he uses his father's anecdotal hearsay evidence to justify him believing in the Holocaust. Which anybody who's studied the Holocaust for more than 10 minutes knows that even the Jews in 1960 came out and said that there was no gas chamber in Dachau. So that's just a little caveat to throw in there at the end, that there was no gas chamber there. But I'll explain to you, and I'm gonna give you guys some links too. But here, let's just play this, and I hope it doesn't lag. But yeah, but this is part of the debate that he was in. So,
tentatively, we think this happened. Now, more recently, we don't. My father was present with General Patton's army liberation of Dachau. He told me about the horrors he had seen, and he decided their Holocaust denial nuts. He would, for the sake of anybody that might read it, write down in Dachau. And then, scant weeks later, they happened to release what's his name, the guy that did It's a Wonderful Life, Frank Capra's color footage of Dachau's liberation. Darn, it wasn't exactly like my father had said. He remembered a real case like that. You know, the Holocaust deniers are just nuts. You know, there's no way to make their view to prove it and look remotely probable, because luckily we're still close enough to those events.
So let's break this down real fast. So his father told him a story based on hearsay because his father saw events. He didn't record it. He didn't document it himself. He didn't take pictures, which is what all these naturalists in the new common era, I call it, common era of atheism, the 21st century atheism, demands that we have some sort of scientific evidence, whether it be through testing in a lab or pictures of the event taking place. They don't accept eyewitness accounts, but yet he uses an eyewitness account, and then how does he justify his eyewitness account? Oh, well, there were photos that proved that there were bodies there, or there were dead people there. Of course there were dead people and bodies in a work labor camp when more than 90% of the country was starving. The only people that weren't starving were people in the government. And even the Red Cross notes this. They had to bring rations to almost all the camps because almost all the camps were starved by the complete blockade that the Allies had set against Germany. The Germany couldn't import any food from any other country except for the ones they controlled. So of course there was starvation at the end of the war. Anybody who studies this within even 10 minutes, like I said, would know this. But yet this just proves he hasn't looked into it. Just like 100% of people who believe in the Holocaust, in my opinion, if they have looked into it, either they have confirmation bias where they ignore stuff that contradicts what they believe, or they just purposely try to find things that validate their own beliefs, which that's not how you historically chronologize anything. Sorry about that if it skips through videos. I have to merge videos because I have to keep pausing because people come in here because I'm at work still technically. So anyways, let's weigh his opinion and his dad's anecdotal evidence against the facts and against other eyewitnesses and against history itself. So people tend to think when they hear about these marches that happened, and they were obviously towards the end of the war in 1945, they tend to call them death marches because they need to use something to make it seem more pernicious than it actually is. When in reality, these marches were actually there to help save the people from the Soviets when they captured the concentration camps. Well, or work camps, whatever you want to call them. They weren't extermination camps. So camps of some sort that involved forced labor. There you go. So anyways, what they did was they started evacuating prisoners from the east, the eastern camps, and sent them west. So a camp like Buchenwald was actually, the prisoners were actually transferred to the west, to Dachau, in hopes that the prisoners would make it there and that the Soviets wouldn't get their hands on the prisoners and that they wouldn't be able to use these prisoners for whatever reason. So what happened was they transferred prisoners from the east to the west, and they couldn't go on train. Why? Well, they tried to, and I'll explain this article right here where it says they were on trains. They couldn't go on trains. Why? Because the train lines were being strafed and bombed by the Allies consistently 24/7, no matter what. Almost all by the time it was 1945, there were basically no railroad tracks left that the Germans could access that were not blown up or somehow hindered in some sort. They obviously couldn't fly them. They didn't have enough planes for this many people. They couldn't drive them. They didn't have enough vehicles, motorized vehicles. So what are they going to do? Are they going to kill them all? Are they going to waste all of their ammo on this? No, they're going to escort them across the country to other camps. And what happened was, obviously, because there was barely any food, because the Allies were consistently bombing Germany at will, randomly, random cities, didn't have any industrial capabilities. I mean, you look at Munich bombings, obviously everybody refers to Dresden. There's just so many different instances where places were taken out just to hurt the civilian population there. And what happened? Well, these people were shot at by the Allies. They were bombed. They were constantly harassed. And that's what happened because they didn't care. The Allies didn't care about who the people were. They didn't know who they were. They could have even just thought, hey, these are a bunch of German people just trying to escort towards the west, or escort themselves towards the west instead of being captured by the Soviets. They want to be captured by the United States and Britain. But I'm digressing, so let's go to this. So let me read this. Before reaching the concentration camp, the 45th Thunderbird Division had discovered an abandoned train. Now this is referring to the train from Buchenwald to Dachau. With no engine on a branch railroad line, which at the time had ran from the Dachau station along Freisinger Street in the direction of the camp. Inside the 39 train cars were the corpses of prisoners who had been evacuated from Buchenwald on April 7, 1945. And because of heavy bombing and strafing by Allied planes in the last days of the war, had not Dachau until 3 weeks later, 2 days before the American soldiers arrived. Most of the regular SS guards and the administrative staff had fled the camp the next day, and there was no one to oversee the burial of the bodies. So that's why there were tons of pictures of bodies buried up, because there was no administrative effort to organize this, to cremate them. This was the last days of the war. They wanted to survive. They wanted to get out of there, so they got out of Dodge and they just left it. Is that right? I mean, no. But then again, they were going to get killed because, right here's the proof. They were shot, actually, by the American soldiers, and this eyewitness actually testifies to that. He's actually a 91-year-old eyewitness who actually took part in liberating the camp, and he admits that they shot a bunch of Germans that were innocent because there were actually Germans actually taken from the army themselves, the Wehrmacht, and they were forced to oversee these operations. And the Allies didn't know this, the Americans didn't know this, so they just shot them. They thought they were German SS men who had tortured and murdered these innocent people. They're completely ignorant. That's why these ignorant fools should not have been allowed to go in these camps after they were liberated. It should have only been authorities, of medical authorities from other countries too, not from the Allied countries, because guess what? They're going to use everything they can as propaganda. They needed somebody who had an unbiased opinion to go in there, help these people out, and get them out of there, as many as they could alive. But no, what did they do? They turned it over to the British and the Americans, who the British actually decided to stuff the prisoners with a bunch of food and ended up killing hundreds of prisoners because they stuffed them when they were on empty stomachs, and they basically ate themselves to death. And what they didn't even know about, they didn't even care to bring medical supplies to get rid of the typhus epidemic that was going on, which the Germans were begging them to do, but never happened. So let me just go on. And no, I'm not referring to when Hitler basically told the camps to not turn over told the commandants to not turn over the camps to the Allies because they wanted the prisoners to be shipped off to the West. I'm talking about after that, after all this had happened. So let me just read the next part. No precise figures are available, but the train had started out with approximately 4,500 to 6,000 prisoners on board, and between 1,300 and 2,600 had made it to Dachau still alive. Some of the dead had been buried along the way or left in rows alongside the tracks. The gruesome sign of the death train was some of the corpses in the open cars riddled by bullets. Now, do you think a 7.62 can easily go through most metal? I mean, I shoot guns, so I know a little bit about this. I've never used a 7.62 on something thick that's metal, maybe steel or anything, but I know for a fact they can go through steel, and they can go through almost all types of metal, besides obviously more dense metals. But I'm not going to digress into that. But these bullet holes, which I'm going to show you in the other article, were testified as to being a much larger diameter than a standard round that, and obviously a 7.62 wasn't invented around then. I'm just saying, like, in modern terms, even most modern bullets can't penetrate steel objects unless they have enough impetus behind them, unless they're a higher caliber bullet, like a 5.56 or 7.62. You know, a 45 might be able to, but just because it has all that gunpowder in it doesn't mean that it has the amount of power that a 7.62 does. So I keep digressing, but the gruesome sight of the death train with some of the corpses in the open riddled by bullets so affected the young soldiers of the 45th Thunderbird Division that they executed Waffen SS soldiers stationed at the Dachau garrison after they had surrendered. So right then and there, even this witness testifies to that. And like I said, I've heard he's using anecdotal hearsay to justify his point, which he condemns Christians for doing. That's ridiculous. But anyways, let's go to this page. So I'm going to include this. Let's see. Oh yeah, I just wanted to show you this. There's a lot of good evidence on here. This argues that this article actually uses a lot of documents to argue that the death toll that they tell you about Dachau was obviously exaggerated. And this is a really sickening part at the end. So this photo shows American soldiers posing beside some of the dead bodies on the death train. The dead men in these photos were not prisoners at Dachau. They were German soldiers who had surrendered to Lieutenant William Walsh and were taken to the train to be shot by the American liberators. That's how sick these people were. And I just want to leave this image in the back of your minds that this is the Allies. This is the good soldier. This is the good soldier from World War II. No trial, no jury, just execution. So yeah, stop believing in this legend. Come into it with an open mind and learn both of the arguments. Don't just accept something that's on the history station as being ubiquitous and just axiomatic. It's not. Nothing when it comes to history is axiomatic. Trust me on that. Nothing in history is axiomatic. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to include all these links in here and maybe even link to the video. So thank you.